Welcome back to Almost a True Crime Podcast, a product of Bitch Pack Media. We are your hosts, Taryn and Madison. Listener discretion is advised due to the mature content and the amount of cuss words we say. You've been warned.
Hey, welcome back, kids.
Hello, what's up?
I shouldn't say kids. Obviously, it's not children.
There are no children here, hopefully. If you're a child, please leave.
Tell your mommy and daddy that you're scared.
Do we have any updates from 45 minutes ago?
No.
Any pressing news happening in the in-between?
No. Are you asking me or the audience that can't respond?
Everyone.
Oh, okay. For me, no.
Okay, me either. I think that's about it.
Okay.
We can just jump right into
All
it.
right.
I think I lied. I think the parts are going to be exactly the same length. I forgot. I think I added more stuff to part one just to even it out and then forgot that I did that. I worry about myself sometimes, honestly. I don't know how much longer I can make it like this. Something has to be wrong deep within. Anyway, if like a bunch of murder isn't your thing, this part is not going to be for you. I'm sure the first 25 to 30 minutes are just going to be going over all of the murders he committed until he got caught. It just made sense to do it in order that way. So, Gacy's first known murder occurred on January 3rd, 1972. So when I said there were 3 bodies buried when he got divorced, he committed a couple murders before that, and then after he got divorced is when the shit really hit the fan.
Yep.
So these are his first murders. 16-year-old Timothy Jack McCoy was at the Greyhound bus station coming from Eaton, Michigan, visiting his dad for Christmas and was waiting for his connecting bus back to Nebraska. Gacy had driven over there to look at some ice sculptures and struck up a conversation with McCoy and learned that his bus wasn't due until noon the next day. So he offered to drive him around, show him the sights, and since his fiancée and children were out of town, he could just sleep at his house and Gacy would take him to the bus station in the morning. He's still married, if that's confusing.
And who...
It's 1972, though.
Yeah, I know. I guess you're right.
Different time.
Hitchhiking was like a normal form of transportation.
Yeah. What was Ed Kemper? Thrived on hitchhiking. So Gacy claims that he woke up and McCoy was standing in the doorway with a knife. So Gacy shoots up. McCoy sort of tilted his arms and the knife upward, like sort of like, hey, I'm not trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
And when he did that, he cut Gacy's arm. And Gacy just lost it. He twisted McCoy's arms, banged his head against the wall, so McCoy kicked him in the stomach, and Gacy ended up overpowering McCoy and told him he was going to kill him, and ended up stabbing him multiple times in the chest. So McCoy's dying on the floor. Gacy goes to clean up the knife and walks in the kitchen and sees that breakfast was set out for 2 people. So McCoy had made breakfast and went to wake Gacy up, not thinking about the knife from making breakfast.
Yeah.
And then got murdered for it.
Right. He was just trying to, like, thank him.
Yeah. Yep. Gacy said that immediately after killing McCoy, he felt totally drained, yet noted that as he stabbed McCoy, as he listened to the gurgulations, he quoted, and gasping for air, that he experienced a mind-numbing orgasm. He added that that's when I realized that death was the ultimate thrill.
That's so disgusting.
It's very fucking disgusting. McCoy was buried in Gacy's crawl space, eventually covered with concrete. I hate thinking of men having a good time. And especially, this is just disgusting.
Thought of men experiencing any joy is nauseating in and of itself.
Disgusting. But this is how you get your rocks off? This is where he was like,
someone dying.
This is what I was made for.
This is what I've been searching for my whole life.
Chasing this high
No
whole
wonder
life.
I haven't been happy.
What a fucking sicko.
That's disgusting.
Gacy said the second time he committed murder was around January 1974. When he was giving his hundreds of interviews to investigators, he sometimes says that it was December of 1974, but I think he was confusing the dates of the first murder with the second murder, so it's like sort of unclear exactly when this happened. It's also unclear because this victim has never been identified, so it's not like they can match it to a missing person or anything. Right. Gacy strangled him and then placed his body in the closet before burial. He later stated that the bodily fluids leaked from the victim's mouth and nose, staining his carpet. As a result, Gacy regularly stuffed cloth rags, the victim's own underwear, or a sock into the mouths of subsequent victims to prevent such leakage from occurring prior to their burial.
Disgusting.
It's so fucking... I can't believe people like this existed.
He's like, so I know this is what happens now.
Yeah.
Now I just learning as he goes. Mm-hmm. Sick.
Disgusting. The third murder that took place before his divorce was a PDM employee, 18-year-old John Butkovich. Butkovich? Have we had this conversation before with this name? Butkovich.
I would say Bukovich.
Bukovich. We did do this. It was a investigator. On July 31st, 1975, Johnny was a hard worker who loved working on his 1968 Dodge, but that cost quite a few dollars to maintain, so he started working for Gacy. Gacy later admitted to encountering him exiting his car at the corner of West Lawrence Avenue, waving to Gacy to try and get his attention. According to Gacy, Johnny approached his car, stating, "I want to talk to you." Gacy invited him into his car and then invited him back to his home. Apparently, Gacy had owed him like 3 weeks of pay, and he hadn't paid him yet. So he was like, "Listen, get in my car. We'll go to my house. We can like figure out what I owe you, and we'll pay you." Well, when they got to Gacy's house, he gave Johnny a drink and talked him into putting handcuffs on. Gacy then sat on his chest for a while, he said, before strangling him to death. So he was like just sitting on this kid. He was going to bury him under the house, but Carol and her daughters got home earlier than he thought, so he had to bury his body under the concrete floor of the tool room extension of his garage in an empty space where he had initially intended to dig a drain tile. The day before his disappearance, Johnny had confronted Gacy again over 2 weeks of outstanding back pay. Johnny's father, a Yugoslav immigrant, called Gacy, who claimed he was happy to help search for his son, but was sorry that Johnny had, quote, run away. When questioned by police, Gacy said Johnny and 2 friends had arrived at his house demanding the overdue pay, but they had reached a compromise and all of them had left. Over the following 3 years, Johnny's parents called police more than 100 times, urging them to investigate Gacy further.
Yeah, what the fuck? Back then, though, kids just run away.
Literally. All of these are like, they probably ran away. The police ended up stop answering this kid's family's calls because they were calling so much. Like, you need to look at this man. Something is not right here.
That's so fucked up.
So then the divorce happens, and he doesn't have people in his house anymore because he had his wife and her 2 kids living there. Mm-hmm. His kids never, like, saw him again, I don't think, after the first divorce. So he has no one in his house anymore. His neighbors reported that after the divorce, they noticed him acting very different. He would leave and come home at all hours of the night, lights on and off all night. They began noticing him hanging around young boys more often. Like, he just stopped caring and started doing whatever he wanted. Because I don't care if you see these people coming to my house. I truly don't care.
Clearly.
So, obviously, the bulk of the murders he committed happened after his divorce.
Divorce.
Why did I say that?
They got divorce.
There wasn't even anything near that should have made me say that. After his divorce. So I'm going to get into those now. And like I said, there is a ton. And there's not a lot of information about these kids. So it's short, but a lot. Mm-hmm. 1 month after his divorce was finalized, Gacy abducted and murdered 18-year-old Daryl Sampson. He was last seen alive in Chicago on April 6, 1976, which is my birthday. Not 1976. That's when my parents were born.
Yeah.
His body was found buried under Gacy's home. 5 weeks later, on the afternoon of May 14th, 1976, 15-year-old Randall Reffitt disappeared shortly after returning to his uptown home from a dental appointment. He was last seen by his grandmother. At the same time, 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton vanished as he walked home from his sister's apartment. They were friends, so it was alleged that they were killed together. Like, it's alleged he picked them both up walking and hanging out. Their bodies were found in the crawl space together. On June 3rd, Gacy killed a 17-year-old Lakeview teenager named Michael Bonin. He disappeared while traveling from Chicago to Waukegan. Gacy strangled Bonin with a ligature and buried him under the spare bedroom. 10 days later, Gacy murdered a 16-year-old uptown youth named William Carroll and then buried him in the crawl space. On July 26, 1976, Gacy picked up 18-year-old David Cram as he hitchhiked on Elston Avenue. Gacy offered him a job with PDM, and he began work the same evening. On August 21st, Cram moved into his house. The next day, Cram and Gacy had several drinks to celebrate his 19th birthday, with Gacy dressed as Pogo. Gacy, terrifying. And I'm not even scared of clowns, but I just don't want to be alone with one. Like, please don't do that shit. Gacy conned Crayon into donning haircuffs. What is wrong with me?
You okay?
I'm very tired, actually.
I can tell.
Into wearing handcuffs. His wrists cuffed in front of his body rather than behind. He swung Crayon around while holding the chain, linking the cuffs, then said he intended to rape him. Crayon ended up kicking Gacy in the face and freed himself from the handcuffs. A month later, Gacy appeared at Crayon's bedroom door intending to rape him, saying, "Dave, you really don't know who I am. Maybe it'd be good if you gave me what I want." Crayon resisted, straddling Gacy, who left the bedroom, stating, "You ain't no fun." Crayon moved out on October 5th and left PDM, although he did periodically work for Gacy over the following 2 years. Shortly after Crayon moved out of Gacy's house, another employee, 18-year-old Michael Rossi, moved in. Rossi had worked for PDM since May 23rd, 1976. He lived with Gacy until April 1977. Rossi sometimes assisted Gacy in clowning at grand openings of businesses. Gacy has Pogo and Rossi has Patches. So there were like two. He had two different clown personas, and sometimes Rossi was the other one. So, like I said, David Crayon survived. He made it out. So some of these people, it's just so weird that like they felt they couldn't. But I mean, who would believe you? People loved John Wayne Gacy in this community before they found out he was a murderer.
Right.
On August 5th, a 16-year-old Minnesota youth named James Hawkinson is last known to have phoned his family, possibly from Gacy's home. Hawkinson died of suffocation. His body was buried in the crawl space beneath the body of a 17-year-old Bensonville youth named Rick Johnston, who was last seen alive on August 6th. An unidentified adult was found buried near these bodies, leading investigators to believe that this person was murdered between June and August as well. They obviously don't know when because they don't even know who he is. He was a white male between 23 and 30 years of age who was missing his top two front teeth and wore a removable denture, which is crazy. That's such like a specific thing that nobody would have like put that together. Gacy is thought to have murdered two further unidentified males between August and October of 1976. One was between 18 to 22 years old and had dental problems at the time of his death. The other was a white male between 15 and 24 years old at the time of his death. Never figured out anything about them. On October 24th, Gacy abducted and killed teenage friends Kenneth Parker and Michael Marino. The two were last seen outside a restaurant on Clark Street in Chicago. They were strangled and buried together and later identified by their dental records. In 2014, Sherry Marino, Michael's mother, had both bodies exhumed, and she claimed DNA tests showed that the remains given to her are not her son's, who she believes is still alive, which is very sad.
So sad.
The Cook County Sheriff's Office and medical examiner stand by their findings. Like, no, that is like the remains of your son.
Wow, that's so sad.
That level of denial is so sad. 2 days later, a 19-year-old construction worker, William Bundy, disappeared after informing his family he was to attend a party. He occasionally worked for PDM contractors. Though his family had always suspected he was one of the victims found in Gacy's crawl space, his remains weren't identified until 2011.
Jesus.
Literally a whole lifetime later, when his siblings provided DNA samples to police at that time. Between November and December 1976, Gacy murdered a 21-year-old named Francis Alexander. His last contact with his family was a phone call to his mother made sometime in November. Alexander was buried in the crawl space directly beneath the room Gacy used as his office. He wasn't identified until 2021. Isn't that crazy? This is still going on.
This is insane.
In December of 1976, another PDM employee, 17-year-old Gregory Godzik, disappeared. His girlfriend last saw him outside her house after he had driven her home following a date. Godzik had worked for PDM for less than 3 weeks before he disappeared. He had informed his family that Gacy had him, quote, dig trenches for some kind of drain tiles in his crawl space. Godzik's car was later found abandoned in Niles, so they obviously think he's a runaway. So his parents and his older sister Eugenia contacted Gacy about Godzik's disappearance, sort of thinking like, oh, well, if he was going to run away, he would definitely have gone to your house to pick up his last paycheck. So like, what was going on? Gacy claimed that he had run away from home, having indicated before that he wished to do so. Gacy also claimed to have received an answering machine message from Godzik shortly after he disappeared. When asked if he could play it so they could hear it, he was like, well, I erased it. His parents urged the police to look into Gacy. His wallet was found during the search of Gacy's home after he got arrested. On January 20th, 1977, Gacy lured 19-year-old Johnny Cizik to his house on the pretext of buying his car. He was also a PDM employee. He later confessed to strangling him in his spare bedroom, claiming Rossi was asleep in the house the following morning, so his roommate, Michael Rossi, was still there. Mm-hmm. Gacy later sold the car to Rossi for $300. So he murdered him and also stole his car.
It's like, you won't be needing this. Here you go.
No. So again, they say it was a runaway because he sold his car. He needed the money. Like, he probably ran away. But his parents...
He would sell his car and then run away?
Yes.
Seems like a car is something you do need to run away
And his
with.
parents were like, well, he left all of his shit behind and all of his money.
Yeah, it doesn't...
Johnny's remains were also found in the crawl space. If you're keeping track, that's like 1 million bodies in this crawl space.
That is a lot. I don't know where we're at.
2 months later, on March 15th, a 20-year-old Michigan native named John Prestige disappeared. Prestige was last seen leaving a near Northside restaurant. He was buried in the crawl space above the body of Francis Alexander. Gacy murdered one additional unidentified youth and buried him in the crawl space in the spring or early summer of 1977. The exact time is unknown.
They literally just, like, kept finding more bodies.
Yes.
Insane.
Yep. At some point before his death, the unknown male had his left clavicle broken and was between 17 and 21 years old. On July 5th, Gacy killed a 19-year-old from Crystal Lake, Matthew Bowman. Bowman's mother last saw him at a suburban train station. He had intended to travel to Harwood Heights for a scheduled court appointment regarding an unpaid parking ticket. He was found in Gacy's crawl space with the rope used to strangle him still wrapped around his neck. The following month, Rossi was arrested for stealing gasoline while driving Cizik's car. The gas station attendant noted the license plate, and the police traced the car to Gacy's house. When questioned, Gacy told the officers that he had sold the car to him in February, saying he needed money to leave town. A check of the VIN confirmed the car did belong to Cizik. The police did not pursue the matter further, although they did inform his mother that her son's car had been found and he sold it. By the end of 1977, it is now known Gacy had murdered 6 more young men between the ages of 16 and 21. The first of these victims was 18-year-old Robert Gilroy, the son of a Chicago police sergeant, last seen alive on September 15th. Gilroy lived just 4 blocks from Gacy's house. He was murdered and buried in the crawl space. An interesting problem with this one was that Gacy was out of town from September 12th to September 16th, allegedly overseeing a construction project. And later on, Gacy claims that he had someone helping him with these murders, which no one would believe, but this is one of the ones when it came out that they sort of like, did he though? Because the last time he was seen, Gacy was out of town. 10 days after Gilroy was last seen, 19-year-old former U.S. Marine John Mowry disappeared after leaving his mother's house to walk to his apartment. When he disappeared, it was very alarming to his family because his sister had been murdered 5 years earlier. So 14-year-old John Mowry got home to see his sister lying on the floor. She had been stabbed 9 times.
Oh my God.
And the killer was never caught.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
his
so
poor family.
His family was like, well, no, something happened. Like, he wouldn't just do this to us after what happened to his sister. Gacy strangled Mowry and buried his body beneath the master bedroom. According to CBS Chicago, he had gone to Gacy's house to inquire about work and never returned. On October 17th, 21-year-old Minnesota native Russell Nelson disappeared. He was last seen outside a Chicago bar. Nelson was looking for contracting work. Gacy murdered him and buried him beneath a guest bedroom. Less than 4 weeks later, Gacy murdered a 16-year-old Kalamazoo teenager named Robert Winch and buried him in the crawl space. On November 18th, 20-year-old father of 1, Tommy Bowling, disappeared after leaving a Chicago bar. He was found in the crawl space and died from strangulation. 3 weeks after the murder of Tommy Bowling, on December 9th, a 19-year-old U.S. Marine David Talsma disappeared after informing his mother he was to attend a rock concert in Hammond, Indiana. Gacy strangled Talsma with a ligature and buried him in the crawl space close to the body of John Mowry. He was identified on what would have been his 21st birthday.
Jesus.
On December 30th, Gacy abducted 19-year-old college student Robert Donnelly from a Chicago bus stop at gunpoint. Gacy drove him to his home where he raped, tortured, and repeatedly dunked Donnelly's head into a bathtub until he passed out. Gacy taunted him with statements such as, "Aren't we playing such fun games tonight?" Donnelly later testified at Gacy's trial, because he was also one of the ones who made it, that he was in such pain that he asked Gacy to kill him. Gacy replied that, "I'm getting around to it." After several hours, Gacy drove Donnelly to his workplace and released him, warning him that if he had complained to the police, they would not believe him. Donnelly reported the assault, and police questioned Gacy on January 6, 1978. Gacy admitted to having a, quote, sex-slave relationship with Donnelly, but insisted everything was consensual, adding that he didn't pay the kid any money. The police believed him. They filed no charges. There was allegedly another unidentified male from the winter of 1977. This unknown white male was between 22 to 33 years of age and was found in possession of a key fob with the name Greg on it. The following month, Gacy killed 19-year-old William Kindred, who disappeared on February 16th after telling his fiancée, who knew Gacy, that he was to spend the evening in a bar. Kindred was the final victim Gacy buried in his crawl space because he ran out of room for bodies.
Literally. They're just, like, stacked upon each other.
Too many bodies. On March 21st, Gacy lured 26-year-old Jeffrey Rignall into his car. Shortly after Rignall entered the car, Gacy chloroformed him and drove him to his house, where his arms and head were restrained in a pillory device affixed to the ceiling and his feet locked in another device. A pillory device is like those old-timey jail devices, like where your arms and your head go through and like Cedar Point type shit. That's what he had. Gacy explained to Rignall that he had complete control over him and that he intended to do whatever he wanted to him, when he wanted, and how he wanted. He then raped and tortured Rignall with various instruments, including lit candles and whips, and repeatedly chloroformed him into unconsciousness. Gacy then drove Rignall to Chicago's Lincoln Park, where he was dumped, unconscious but alive. The chloroform permanently damaged his liver. Rignall managed to stagger to his girlfriend's apartment. Police were informed of the assault but did not investigate Gacy. Rignall was able to recall through haze of the night the Oldsmobile, the Kennedy Expressway, and particular side streets. He and two friends stalked out the Cumberland exit of the expressway, and in April, Rignall saw the Oldsmobile, which he and his friends followed to 8213 West Summerdale. Police obtained an arrest warrant, and Gacy was arrested on July 15th. He faced trial for assault and battery against Rignall at the time of his arrest. Rignall did say that he wasn't sure that Gacy acted alone because he remembers another light in the house turning on when he was in there with Gacy. So, like, he knew someone was there, and, like, they had to have known what was going on.
I mean, at this point, it has to smell so fucking bad in there.
So, but it's full of fucking bodies.
Like, that...
So he had this going on, but he isn't in jail. It's like one of those weird...
Like, they couldn't hold him until...
Yeah, like he was technically arrested, but they had to wait for a trial or something. So after this, Gacy dumps the next 5 bodies in the river. He said he thought when he threw one over, it landed on a barge, which was like a giant boat. So, like, this would seem to check out because they only ever found 4 bodies recovered from the I-55 to Plains River. So he probably did. Can you imagine? He threw a body over, it landed on a fucking boat. You get, like, how many hundreds of miles away before you see that, like, a dead body out of nowhere on your ship.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Because I think a barge is pulled by, like, a much smaller ship. So I don't even know if anyone is even on a barge.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, someone has to be like...
But it's being pulled, like a tow. It's like being towed. That's what happens to
I guess, like,
barges.
Okay. Weird.
So weird.
Oh, God. Imagine, like, that sucks.
He tried to put some bodies in his attic, but decided to stop due to possible leakage coming from the attic. The first known victim thrown from the I-55 bridge into the Des Plaines River was 20-year-old Timothy O'Rourke. He was murdered in mid-June after leaving his Dover Street apartment to purchase cigarettes. Shortly before his disappearance, O'Rourke had told his roommate a contractor on the northwest side had offered him a job. On November 4th, Gacy killed 19-year-old Frank Langdon. He was last seen alive by his father walking along Foster Avenue. His naked body was found close to an inlet in the Des Plaines River by 2 duck hunters on November 12th. The Washington Post reported a pair of underwear had been stuffed in the 19-year-old's mouth. Frank Landon's cause of death was certified at autopsy as suffocation through his own underwear being lodged down his throat, plugging his airway and effectively causing him to drown on his own vomit. So he was alive when he was thrown over the river. His body was also identified via fingerprint records. A bond slip issued to Langdon the day before his death was found at Gacy's home. On November 24th, a 20-year-old Elmwood Park resident, James Mazzara, disappeared after sharing Thanksgiving dinner with his family. Mazzara
I love Thanksgiving.
You do love Thanksgiving. I hate it.
I love it.
Mazzara had informed his sister the day prior to his disappearance that he was working in the construction industry and doing all right. He was last seen walking in the direction of Bughouse Square carrying a suitcase. There had been evidence in Gacy's home when they searched it that linked James to Gacy's crimes. I don't know what they found, but they were able to figure it out. So, 15-year-old Robert Piest would be Gacy's final victim. On the afternoon of December 11th, 1978, Gacy visited the Nissan pharmacy in Des Plaines to discuss a potential... Des Plaines?
Yes.
Okay. Sounded weird. To discuss a potential remodeling deal with the store owner, Phil Torf. While he was within earshot of 15-year-old part-time employee Robert Piest, Gacy mentioned that his firm often hired teenage boys at a starting wage of $5 per hour, which was almost double the pay that Piest earned at the pharmacy. Shortly after Gacy left the pharmacy, I said Priest, but that is not right. It's Piest.
Oh, okay.
Piest. And I knew that. Typed it wrong one time, and I just went with it. His mother arrived at the store to drive him home so the family could celebrate her birthday together. He asked his mother to wait, adding that some contractor wants to talk to me about a job. He left the store at 9 p.m., promising to return shortly. Piest was murdered shortly after 10 p.m. at Gacy's home. Gacy later stated that at his house he gave Piest a soft drink before asking whether there was anything he wouldn't do for the right price.
Jesus.
To which Piest replied that he did not mind working hard because he's, 15?
Yeah.
He's like, I don't really know what you're talking about, but I will do good work. In response, Gacy stated good money could be earned by hustling, although Piest was dismissive. He's like, Gacy then duped Piest into putting on handcuffs before saying, I'm going to rape you and you can't do anything about it. He also admitted to having slept alongside Piest's body that evening before disposing of the corpse in the Des Plaines River in the early hours of December 13th. On his way to the police station... Oh, wait. He ended up having to go to the police station for that other thing right after this. That other assault. Like,
gotcha.
Some shit like that. I really just jumped right into that. On his way to the police station, he had been in a minor traffic accident. After disposing of Piest, his vehicle had slid off an ice-covered road and had to be towed from its location. Gacy's subsequent statements regarding the events to unfold varied, although in one of his initial statements he claimed that Piest failed to resist as he removed the boy's trousers. He also stated that as he placed the rope around his neck, the boy was crying and scared. Gacy admitted to having received a phone call from a business acquaintance as Piest lay dying, suffocating on his bedroom floor. His body was eventually pulled from the Illinois River on April 9th, 1979. So, we're actually pretty close to being done. Because it all wraps up quick. That's all the murders. Which is so fucking... I can't believe someone is capable of murdering that many
Like, just constantly.
people.
Just constant.
For years, he was just straight murdering people all the time.
And just not even burying them.
Just throwing them in your crawl space.
Just continuously pouring concrete. Like, eventually you just run out of space.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, obviously.
So when Robert didn't come back into the pharmacy where his mom was waiting for him, his family filed a missing persons report with the Des Plaines. Why can't I say that, police? They were not buying the idea that Robert was a runaway. They're like, okay, well, no. You could be done with that.
Yeah.
The shop owner told police that Gacy was probably who Robert was talking to about a job because he told his mom, I'm going to talk about this job. I'll be right back. The owner was like, he's probably talking to John Wayne Gacy. Lieutenant Joseph Kozenczak? CZAK is pronounced in a weird way, isn't it?
CZAK.
Lieutenant Joseph K.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know.
For the sake of time and energy. Whose son attended Maine West High School like Piest, chose to investigate Gacy further. He was like, I will look into this further. A routine check of Gacy's criminal background, which should have been done a million times.
That just
This is the
blows
first
my
time
mind.
someone pulls this up. Revealed that he had an outstanding battery charged against him in Chicago and had served a prison sentence in Iowa for the sodomy of a 15-year-old boy.
Huh.
You don't say.
Weird.
So, Lieutenant Joseph and two Des Plaines police officers visited Gacy at his home the following evening. Gacy indicated that he had seen two youths working at the pharmacy and that he had asked one of them, who he believed to be Robert Piest, he's like, I think it was the kid you're talking about, whether there were any remodeling materials behind the store. He was adamant, however, that he did not offer Robert a job. He's like, I didn't offer him a job and had only returned to the pharmacy shortly after 8 p.m. because he left his appointment book at the store. So, like, he had been there earlier and then went back again. He's like, I only did that because I left some shit there. Gacy promised to come to the station later that evening to make a statement confirming this, indicating that he was able to do so at the moment because his uncle had just died. When questioned as to how soon he could come to the police station to make this statement, he said, "You guys are very rude."
Hello? Did you not just hear me? Like, what the?
My uncle died. At 3:20 a.m., Gacy arrived at the police station covered in mud, claiming he had been involved in a car accident. On returning to the police station later that day, Gacy denied any involvement in Robert's disappearance and repeated that he had not offered him a job. When asked why he returned to the pharmacy, he reiterated that he had done so in response to a phone call from Torf informing him that he had left his appointment book at the store. What he doesn't know is detectives had already spoken with Torf, who denied calling him. Like, okay, well, we never actually called him. At the request of detectives, Gacy prepared a written statement detailing his movements on December 11th. So, on December 13th, 1977, police get a search warrant for Gacy's home under the impression that he had Robert Piest alive inside his home. God. So this is what they're thinking. They're like, we need to get a search warrant because that kid is in there.
Who, buddy?
Isn't it? They don't know what the fuck they're about to get into. My throat hurts so bad from talking, which is weird because we do this all the time.
I know. There's a lot, though.
There is a lot going on here.
We haven't, I guess we just did Waco, so. Yeah, buck up. I don't know what to tell you.
I know. I've done much.
It's not that crazy.
I've done much worse than this. So they get a search warrant, and they're thinking this is like a one-off thing. There's one kid in there. He's alive.
Yeah.
We have to
get out of there.
Yeah. They found bottles of medicine, homosexual books, handcuffs, syringes. Several driver's licenses were found in the northwest bedroom. Jesus. There was an 18-inch dildo.
What the fuck? Who even makes such a thing? 18 inches.
In 1970?
This is about a foot. 18. Do you think this is 18 inches?
I can't guess things like that. If I would say yes.
That seems like...
Where's it going?
That's not safe.
No, it's not safe.
There's things in the way that there's no way 18 inches.
It shouldn't be manufactured.
No. Ugh.
It's sick. And they found a receipt from the pharmacy. A blue hooded parka was found on top of a toolbox inside the laundry room. And underwear, much too small to fit Gacy.
He was a big man.
Yeah, was located inside a bathroom closet. In the northwest bedroom, investigators found a class of 1975 Maine West High School ring with the initials JAS. Important to note, for some odd reason, the heat wasn't on when they did this. So, like...
It's December.
Yes. The heat isn't on very well, so, like, there's no smells aren't there right now.
Probably partially frozen.
Yeah. So at this point, they take Gacy's personal car and his work cars to go through and assign round-the-clock surveillance on him, which he openly taunted, inviting them in to eat and hang out. He would, like, break minor traffic laws in front of them, being like, you're not going to arrest me for something this stupid when you, like, have all this other shit going on.
Wow.
He was living the high life. He's like, you guys are dumb. I'm certainly getting away with this.
Well, I mean, he has for this long, so why would you think not? But, like... There's bodies on bodies in your home.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think that's going to...
Police are going through, like your things
found
now.
Out.
On December 15th, Des Plaines investigators obtained further details of Gacy's battery charge, learning the complainant, Jeffrey Rignall, had reported that Gacy had lured him into his car, then chloroformed, raped, and tortured him before dumping him with severe chest and facial burns and rectal bleeding in Lincoln Park the following morning. Because this is still an ongoing thing for him. They then learned of the disappearance of John Bukovich. The same day, the Maine West High School ring that was traced to John Allen Cizik. An interview with Cizik's mother revealed that several items from her son's apartment were also missing. Missing. And I don't know. There's like no words around there that would have made me said that. I'm actually losing my mind. Including a TV set. So, investigators conducted a formal interview of Rossi, who lived with John Wayne Gacy on December 17th. He informed them that Gacy had sold Cizik's vehicle to him, explaining that he had bought the car from Cizik because he needed money to move to California. A further examination of Gacy's Oldsmobile was conducted on this date as well. In the course of examining the trunk of his car, investigators discovered a small cluster of fibers they suspected to be human hair. That evening, officers conducted a test using 3 trained German Shepherd search dogs to determine whether Piest had been present in any of Gacy's vehicles, One dog approached Gacy's Oldsmobile and laid on the passenger seat in what the dog handler informed investigators was like a death reaction. Like they must have certain things indicating that like his body had been in the vehicle, but like I don't know how they know that.
I don't know.
Dogs are so fucking smart.
So smart.
German Shepherds are smart.
Those, yeah. They're police officers.
Yeah, they're narcs. That's what my dad wants. Imagine having a narc in our house.
No, I'm scared just thinking about it.
Train it sniff drugs. You're going down, bitch.
Train it to like drugs.
Okay, you're right. You'd be like Shaggy and Scooby down here.
Yeah.
Eating full sandwiches.
Oh my God, how cute. Lola likes weed. She likes going out to the garage with me.
She likes to get the vibes.
She loves the vibes out there.
I love her.
Oh, I should have brought her.
It's weird that you like can do that.
Maybe I'll bring her Wednesday.
Oh, good idea. We can have her live in studio.
Yeah. Just let her run around. I bet your dad would love Lola. He'd be like, immediately, you guys are going to have a dog the next day.
By December 18th, Gacy was beginning to display signs of strain from the constant surveillance. He was unshaven, he looked tired, he appeared anxious, and was drinking heavily. That afternoon, he drove to his lawyer's office to prepare a $750,000 civil suit against the Des Plaines police, demanding that they cease their surveillance. So he's like, actually, I'm suing you guys. You
Done with all this.
Leave me alone because I didn't do anything.
Yeah, right.
That same day, the police talked to a girl who worked at the pharmacy with Robert Piest and confirmed that the blue parka found in Gacy's home was Robert's. That same evening, Rossi was interviewed a second time. This time, he was more cooperative. He informed detectives that in the summer of 1977, at Gacy's request, he had spread 10 bags of lime in the crawl space of Gacy's house. I think lime is like...
It decomposes shit,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Like, several years ago when I read about this case, I thought he was, like, dumping limes. Like, just...
Oh, like
the fruit.
Yeah,
I'm like,
no.
Wow. You really think...
I think it's like with a Y.
Yeah, that is correct. The more you know.
The more you know.
On December 19th, investigators began compiling evidence for a second search warrant for Gacy's house. He again invited the surveillance people inside. So this time they start creeping around a little better because they think that that TV I mentioned that was John Cizik's, it has a serial number. So like they want to get the serial number of the TV at his house because then they can prove it was John's. So when the other officer was using the bathroom, he said the heat kicked on and he just smelled rotting corpses, he said. It just instantly smelled. So on December 20th, Gacy went to his lawyer's office, Sam Amarant, because they had a scheduled meeting to discuss like this giant civil suit he's launching against the police. But when Gacy walked in, he just looked a fucking mess. He was disheveled. He asked for a drink immediately, which is like so weird. I feel like on old TV shows you see that like people just have,
drink.
Yeah, they just have alcohol in their office and like a nice decanter.
Yes. A
So
rocks glass.
Isn't that
or a
great? We should
single-
bring that back.
Should, but
So-
it'll be like this stuff.
Yeah, it won't be anything
Oh
great.
my God, wait, that would be so cute. That's okay.
Next on the list.
Next on the list.
So he immediately drinks 2 glasses of whiskey. And at this point, I think his lawyer is just sick of him. Like, you can tell this man is lying. So he's like pressing him for information. And Gacy just loses it. He points to the paper sitting on the desk that has, like, Robert Piest is in the paper. And he's like, that boy's dead. He's like, he's not missing. Like, the paper says he's missing. He's dead. He's in the river.
Oh my God.
He then just goes on this huge rambling confession. They had killed somewhere around 30 people and buried them in his crawl space and then threw some in the river. And then he sort of like tries to justify it by like saying, well, they were all male prostitutes and runaways. And he buried them under his house. So they're his property, actually.
Because that's how that works.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, well, they belong to me. So it's like actually not that big of a deal.
Like, I don't know why you would be looking at me like that. It's not that serious, dude.
But Gacy is so drunk that he falls asleep in the middle of this confession. So his lawyer is like, what the fuck? So he immediately schedules like a 9 a.m. psych exam. Like the second you wake up in this office, you're going to like be mentally evaluated because something is wrong. So he wakes up several hours later and his lawyer is like, you said a lot of shit last night that like we should probably talk about.
Yeah.
And Gacy was like, well, no. I don't want to. He's like, I'm also not going to that psych evaluation. I can't think about that stuff right now. I have like other stuff to do. Like, don't bring that energy over here. Can you imagine waking up with like the anxiety of knowing you confessed to committing like several murders?
No, I actually can't.
Oh. I stay up until like 1 a.m. and I'm certain I've like done irreparable damage just by like being awake at that hour. Yes. I can't imagine waking up to like, wow, I really told all my damn secrets last night. So he's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to that psych evaluation. Leave me alone. So he goes on this farewell tour, driving around, saying goodbye to his friends, because at this point he knows his arrest is imminent. He's like done too much. And the surveillance people are following him this whole time. So he's just like acting bizarre. He's crying. He's confessing things to his friends. So they get the okay to arrest Gacy because they're actually very concerned like he's going to kill himself.
Yes.
Like he's just riding around and then he's going to kill himself. So,
let's not let that happen.
No. So they get him into some type of custody. So like on this farewell tour, he had like gotten gas and he had like given a bag of pot to like the worker there. Like, I don't need this anymore. You can have it. So they like end up being able to arrest him for that. Like, okay, well, it's time. We'll just use the pot thing. Yeah. We're done. On 4:30 p.m. on December 21st, the eve of the hearing of Gacy's civil suit, Judge Marvin J. Peters granted the request for a second search warrant. After police informed Gacy of their intentions to search his crawl space for the body of Robert, he denied the teenager was buried there, but confessed to having killed in self-defense a young man whose body was buried under his garage. He's like, you won't find his body. You might find one under the garage, but that was a misunderstanding.
Like, it wasn't...
And
look, I know how this sounds.
He was trying to kill me. Can you imagine? You know you're going to get caught. We're searching a crawl space. He's like, okay, well, you're not going to find... There's like one.
Just like maybe one.
What's his problem?
He's a psychopath.
So, armed with the signed search warrant, police and evidence technicians drove to Gacy's home. On their arrival, officers found Gacy had unplugged his sump pump, flooding the crawl space with water. To clear it, they simply replaced the plug and waited for the water to drain. After it had done so, he's like, show you guys, bitch, idiot. After it had drained out, evidence technician Daniel Genty entered the... Genty? I don't know.
At this point, it doesn't matter.
He entered the crawl space. It's like a 28 by 38 foot crawl space. It's not that big. He crawled to the southwest area and began digging. Within minutes, he had uncovered putrefied flesh and a human arm bone. He immediately shouted to the investigators that they could charge Gacy with murder, adding, I think this place is full of kids. A police photographer then dug in the northeast corner of the crawl space, uncovering a patella, and then two began digging in the southeast corner, uncovering 2 lower leg bones. And all of these bodies are way too decomposed to be Robert, and there are bones all over the place. So they're realizing the gravity of the situation that they have just stumbled into.
There is a lot.
Yeah, like this is not Robert's leg bone because this has been here for a very long time. Like, this is not one murder. This is like not one self-defense murder buried in the garage. This is an actual disaster. So the police go back to Gacy and they're like, what the fuck?
What's up? What's up,
the fuck, dude?
What's up, my guy?
So they're like, you know you're being charged with murder now, right? Like, he was basically like, yeah.
We're done doing this weird dance.
Yeah, he's like, I get it. He's like, I figured. He's like, I wanted to clear the air. He's like, you're right. Like, clear the air. They already found 30 bodies in your... the air is cleared. No thanks to you, actually. So, in the early morning hours of December 22nd, and in the presence of his lawyers, Gacy provided a formal statement in which he confessed to murdering approximately 30 young males, all of whom he claimed had entered his house willingly. He claimed to not know or not remember their names. He said he dug 5 of the graves, and then he had other people dig trenches in his crawl space so that he would have graves available. In January of 1979, he had planned to conceal the corpses even further by covering the entire crawl space with concrete. Which is crazy because that's when he got caught. But can you imagine if he was able to concrete that whole fucking thing? Who knows what would have happened?
I just still feel like the smell has to come through.
You would think.
There's no way.
It's too bad. It's too bad. So then Gacy draws a quick diagram sketch of where the bodies are located in the crawl space, and the police get to work searching. When Gacy completed this diagram, he closed his eyes for 1 minute and then opened them, exclaiming, "What's going on?" He said, "Oh, I see Jack drew a diagram of the crawl space," which comes up later. Mm-hmm. So 26 bodies were unearthed from Gacy's crawl space over the next week. 3 more were also unearthed elsewhere on his property. The bodies were labeled victim numbers in the order that they were found, which I just don't get into because it's much too confusing. It's not the order they were murdered, the order they were found. It's all different. And it doesn't really make a difference. All that matters is that they were found, most of them with something lodged in their throat, like he said, to prevent leakage. Some of them found with items around their pelvic region indicated they had been inserted anally and left there. So that week they had found 26 bodies. And then the Chicago blizzard of 1979 happened and they had to stop, but told Gacy they were going to continue the search in March when it finally let up. And he said there's really no point. You already found all of the bodies, which when they resumed searching in March, they found out that was a lie and discovered the remaining 2 bodies under his house. His house was promptly demolished in April. 1 month later, they're like, we got to tear this whole fucking thing down. We can't have this in here anymore.
Yeah, like, probably for the best overall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They then recovered the bodies from the river. Timothy O'Rourke had been discovered months ago, but was linked to Gacy after his arrest. So they had found Timothy O'Rourke's body before this even happened. And then after he gets arrested, they're like,
this makes sense.
That was probably one of his. They then found Frank Langdon, Jay Mazar in December, and then finally discovered Robert Piest last in April of 1979. When asked if there were more victims, Gacy stated, that's for you guys to find out.
Jesus Christ.
He's like an actual psychopath. All right. Home stretch. Trial. That's about fucking it, because this is not a lot. You can't say a whole lot about it.
Yeah.
So, 37-year-old John Wayne Gacy, he's only 37, which I thought he was much older.
Jesus.
Didn't he
That's
look
like
50s?
Yeah.
When you picture him in your mind?
37?
37 years old.
Ugh.
His trial started February 6, 1980. He was tried in Cook County, Illinois, before Judge Louis Garippo. The jury was selected from Rockford, obviously because of extensive press coverage in Cook County. They could not have found anyone. The jury was immediately sequestered, which is smart. They also chose to try him for all of the murders together instead of separately. They said this trial would be costly and long enough and so emotionally draining that they had more than enough evidence, they felt like, to do it all. There's no reason to do it 33 times.
Yeah.
Like, we can do it all in one time.
A new jury every time. Like, that's too fucking much.
They separate juries, like, murders like that. In case they fail at one, they can still get you for the second one. They're like, we feel strongly enough that we can get you on one and we can get you for all of them at the same time. The judge gave the defense until November 30th, 1979 to decide whether or not they wanted to have the trial in Cook County at all, which I'm surprised they did. Mm-hmm. Maybe they knew it really wouldn't matter. Mm-mm. Or maybe he was such a narcissist. He was like, well, people love me here, so. Good luck convicting me here. At the request of his defense counsel, Gacy spent over 300 hours with doctors at the Menard Correctional Center in Chester in the year before his trial. So his big defense idea was that he has multiple personality disorder. Well, so he's trying to convince his doctors of that so he can get an insanity plea. He's like, I have multiple personalities. He claimed to have 4 personalities: the hardworking, civic-minded contractor, the clown, the active politician, and a policeman called Jack Hanley, whom he referred to as Bad Jack, which when he drew the crawl space, he was like, oh, Jack drew you something. When Gacy had confessed to police, he claimed to be relaying the crimes of Jack, who detested homosexuality and who viewed male prostitutes as weak, stupid, and degraded scum. So, Gacy pleads not guilty by reason of insanity, and his lawyers open up with, the insanity defense has been looked upon as an escape, a defense of last resort. The defense of insanity is valid, and it is the only defense that we could use here because that's where the truth lies, because if Gacy is normal, then our concept of normality is totally distorted. So he's basically being like, this cannot be normal.
There is no way this man is not insane.
Exactly. Which honestly, I don't think it's multiple personalities.
No. I think there's something ain't fucking right.
3 psychiatrists testified and they found him to be a paranoid schizophrenic with multiple personalities. Oh. And the prosecutors were basically like, there's no fucking way. These were extremely premeditated. He went through great lengths to cover it up. He knew it was wrong because he was covering it up. He had graves pre-dug by his worker, so he would have graves ready to go. He had spread lime all over the crawl space to try and cover up the murders. Like, no. Even if you are insane, you knew exactly.
So take that and shove it up your ass.
Shut up, bitch. On February 18th, Robert Stein testified that all the bodies recovered from Gacy's property were markedly decomposed and putrefied, skeletalized remains. and that of all the autopsies he performed, 13 victims had died of asphyxiation, 6 of ligature strangulation, 1 of multiple stab wounds to the chest, which is that first one, and 10 in undetermined ways. The defense tried to say that all of the deaths were accidental erotic asphyxiation. He's like, okay, well, they're all an accident because, like, he liked choking and it just went too far.
Well, I don't think you can do it that many times and still be considered
Robert,
an accident, bud.
One of the prosecutors was like, that sounds highly unlikely. I don't think that's a thing. Jeffrey Ricknold testified on behalf of the defense on February 21st, recounting his ordeal. That was the guy that escaped. Ricknold rapped repeatedly while describing Gacy's torture of him in March of 1978. He said that Gacy acted in such an animalistic way that it was almost like he wasn't thinking about it. Like, in that moment, he did not have the ability to conform his actions to the law, and then Jeffrey threw up and was dismissed.
That sucks.
I can't imagine having to do that.
Especially knowing, like, that could have been you.
Yes.
Like,
you were so close. A few more of his survivors testified for the prosecution. After 5 weeks of the trial, Gacy sent the judge a letter requesting a mistrial due to, like, several things that just don't make sense. He wanted to testify. He disagreed with the insanity defense. The police were lying about him. He's like, it's all fucked up.
Yeah.
On March 11th, 1980, final arguments began and lasted 1 day. The prosecution focused on how terrible Gacy was. It was not hard. His pattern of abusing young boys and his attempts to cover it all up. The defense focused on the psychiatrist that diagnosed Gacy with multiple personality disorder and that Gacy seemed out of control when committing the murders, as explained by some of the survivors talking about how feral Gacy seemed. So, like, some of his survivors were like, the lights were on and no one was home in there. Like, he was not acting like a human. So the defense lawyer attempted to portray Gacy as a man driven by compulsions. He was unable to control.
Because you had graves buried.
Yes, exactly. He also contended that the state had not met their burden of proof, their burden of proving Gacy sane beyond a reasonable measure. The defense had people testify for Gacy as well. Gacy's mother told of how her husband abused Gacy on several occasions, which is crazy. His mom is still alive because he's only 37.
Jesus Christ.
At one time, whipping him with a leather strap. Gacy's sister told a similar story of how she repeatedly witnessed her brother being verbally abused by their father. Others who testified for the defense told of how Gacy was a good and generous man who helped those in need and always had a smile on his face. Lily Grexa took the stand, which was their very good neighbor friend, and told of how wonderful a neighbor he was. However, Mrs. Grexa did say something that would prove damaging to Gacy's case. She refused to say that he was crazy. Instead, she said she believed that Gacy was a very brilliant man. She's like, he's the smartest man I've ever met. Like, he's not insane. She probably thought she was helping, but like, it directly conflicts with the insanity plea they're trying to get. The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 50 minutes before finding Gacy.
Nail biter.
Yeah. It's never good when
they all walk in and they're like, okay, so.
Yeah, we're good, right?
Yeah.
They walk Gacy into the room. They come right back like,
we got
it. He was found guilty of all 33 murder charges. He was also found guilty of sexual assault and taking indecent liberties with a child, both convictions in reference to Robert Piest. At the time, his conviction for 33 murders was the most for which any person in the United States history had ever been convicted. I think Samuel Little now holds that title. He confessed to 93 murders, and the FBI has found like 50 of those to be extremely credible. But at that time, this man was like, what the fuck is going on? 33 fucking murders. Oh my God. In the sentencing phase of the trial, the jury deliberated for more than 2 hours before sentencing Gacy to death for each murder committed after the Illinois statute on capital punishment came into effect in June of 1977. So, like, you picked the very wrong time to commit multiple murders when they just said, like, let's do the death penalty.
Yeah, let's bring that back.
Yeah. His execution was set for June 2nd, 1980, so just less than 3 years later.
That is so crazy, because some people sit on death row for
forever. Like, you don't even get a date that soon anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they give you a date anymore. They, like, just let you exhaust your appeals and then sort of figure it out from there. Yeah. Like I said, there was not much to this trial. They had no argument. He obviously filed appeal after appeal. Gacy also contended that although he had some knowledge of 5 of the murders, McCoy, Bukovic, Godzik, Sizik, and Piest, The other 28 murders had been committed by employees who had keys to his house while he was away on business trips. He was like, I did know about 5, but these other ones...
Not me, dude.
There were people in my house.
Don't put that on me.
He claimed...
Don't you put that on me, Ricky Bobby.
He claimed ineffective counsel. He claimed the initial search warrant was illegal. He tried everything. He went through all of the courts. This took years.
Yeah.
And finally, after the U.S. Supreme Court denied Gacy's final appeal in October of 1993, the Illinois Supreme Court formally set an execution date for May 10th, 1994. So he did last like 14 years on death row.
Jesus.
All right. On the morning of May 9th, 1994, Gacy was transferred from the Menard Correctional Center to Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill to be executed. That afternoon, he was allowed a private picnic on the prison grounds with his family for his last meal. Gacy,
who's his family? His mom?
Mom and his sisters, probably.
Oh, yeah. Who wants to sit and eat with you? How?
No, absolutely not. For his last meal, Gacy ordered a bucket of KFC, a dozen fried shrimp, french fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke.
Yum.
It does sound like a good last meal, though. He got his last rites from a Catholic priest. You're going to hell if you believe in hell.
I don't understand that. Like
your last rites?
How does the Catholic priest come up there and be like,
let's do this. Let's get you into heaven. Absolutely not. And then he was escorted to the lethal injection chamber. His final statement to his lawyer before his execution was that killing him would not compensate for the loss of others and that the state was murdering him. His final spoken words were reported to be, "Kiss my ass," although prosecutor William Kunkel stated in 2020 that these words were spoken to a prison official and they were not part of any official statement that he had given. But technically, those were his very last words. He said out loud. Yeah. There was a clog in his IV tube, so they had to close the curtains because you used to be able to watch this as the public. So they had to close the curtains, replace the tube, and then reopen the curtains and injected the chemicals into Gacy. The whole thing took about 18 minutes.
Damn, that's a long time.
To be laying there waiting to die.
Yeah.
After Gacy's death was confirmed at 12:58 a.m. on May 10th, 1994, his brain was removed. It is in the possession of Helen Morrison, a witness for the defense at Gacy's trial, who has interviewed Gacy and other serial killers in an attempt to isolate common personality traits of violent sociopaths. His body was cremated. I think it came out that, like, there's just nothing wrong with it. It was just a completely normal brain. This lady really was, like, hot and heavy on, like, there's something mentally wrong with all of these people. Like, there's a link in their brains.
You would have to think so.
You would have to. So she was...
I don't know how brains work, though. Like, can you still see, like...
They do that for football players. Like, whatever Aaron Hernandez had, they took his brain to see how bad it was all fucked up from being hit in the head so many times.
I don't know anything about Aaron Hernandez, if I'm being serious.
God.
I know. I don't... That one's, like, just one I've never even, like, dove into. None of it.
All right, I'm going to do it then, because that's so interesting.
I would like to know about it.
Nearly 24 relatives of Gacy's victims were barred from the execution chamber as a security precaution. They just couldn't be in there.
They can't kill him while he's being killed?
Yeah, exactly. They kept a vigil in an administration building until they received word of the execution.
See, that... I don't know. That all makes it weird to me.
Like, what do you do with that information? Like, they walk in and they're like, he's dead,
gone.
Like, now, cheer? Okay.
Like, I don't know what...
I would rather be at home and have you call me.
But, like even then, I don't know. I guess, like, he was in prison. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't... I don't know. Capital murder is such a...
It is very weird to me. What do you gain from it?
I don't know. But some people, like... I mean, I don't want him to be alive either.
No, me either. See, that's the problem. I'm like, well, yeah, of course he should die. But then it's like, why are we taking this into our own hands?
I don't know. Such a dicey subject.
It is. Tim Nieder, whose brother John Morey, who was murdered, said, "We were victims here too. I feel like justice has finally been served, but it's been a long time in the making." Before his trial, Gacy initiated contact with WLS TV journalist Russ Ewing, to whom he granted numerous interviews between 1979 and 1981. Ewing later collaborated with the author Tim Cahill to publish the book Buried Dreams, which is where I got a lot of this information from. After Gacy was executed, his paintings that he did in prison were sold. Some of them were put on display somewhere in Las Vegas, which people were not very happy about.
No.
like, don't give him that attention. They, like, made, like, a very typical argument of, like, we just want to show, like, the bad and the, like, we shut up.
Shut up.
The ones that weren't put on display, they were purchased, and they were purchased by some of the victims' family members. They all, like, got together and bought them, and then they publicly burned them.
That's a good idea.
So great.
But then, like, where's that money go?
Exactly. Who gets the money?
Because it should be going to the victims' families.
Yes. I don't understand. And that's it. That is the story of John Wayne Gacy.
Oh, God.
I feel like John Wayne Gacy is one of those serial killers that people think they know the most about, and they probably actually know the least. I feel like they see the clown and they run with it, but that's like not.
I feel like that's the only one that I like knew a decent amount about, but I feel like I've watched a couple things about it.
I have also watched a couple. It's just so interesting.
Because the clown thing really does draw you in, and then you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, he was just actually a psychopath. It had nothing to do with that. Because he was just so well liked. Like, by everyone. Like, Jeffrey Dahmer was a fucking weirdo, and everyone knew he was a weirdo. Mm-hmm. Same with Ted Bundy. I think he was like, people thought he was handsome, but like a creep.
You could tell you didn't want to be alone with him.
No. He was a very popular and likable man. What a creep.
Sometimes those are the worst.
Agreed. And it's 9:00 now, so we gotta go.
Yeah, I do.
I hope you enjoyed this 2-parter.
I did. It was a good one. Good job.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks.
I'm trying to think of what I want to do. I want to do a good one. I've been bashed enough. So I need to put in some work.
All right. Like we said, go listen to Ladyland Countess to figure out, we piece together what happened at Put.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear. Actually, don't tell me until we're on the air.
I'm not. I'm going to save it all.
I can't wait. Oh, God. This could be embarrassing.
This is coming out a week later. So if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to
the revelations.
Please do.
Okay,
bye.
right.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at AlmostPod. If you want an additional episode every week, you can find us at Patreon at AlmostPod.
If you have a case you want us to cover, throw it in a review on Apple Podcasts. You can find merch and all other information at bitchpackmedia.com, and we'll see you next week.
Bye!